Welcome everybody to Get Real with Morton, and today I am joined once again by Frank Lynn, who is backed by demand.
Thank you.
So it seemed that everyone liked your last video, Frank.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So I think Frank is a financial planner and he helps a lot of our team.
Yes.
And today we're going to talk about a topic which seems dry, except if you're in the property game, and that is how to buy property in your super. And I know that no one really understands this. Even us as real estate agents get confused. So it's good to have you here. So I suppose the first question, Frank, is why do it? Why buy property in super as opposed to, buying it in your own name or outside of super?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question because oftentimes when we ever invested into properties, we would find out that we need to have a loan and to buy the property. Sometimes it's difficult if you don't have a stable income or if your income changes.
So super is more stable.
So super is assessed actually differently as an individual person. We'll get to that.
Okay.
And the second is you're going to have to pay a lot of tax, especially when you selling your properties.
Capital gains tax.
Capital gains tax.
Indeed you do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, the superannuation actually cleverly avoided these kind of issues if you do that in your own name.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're getting back to why you can borrow a bit more money, because as a super, when you create your own super fund, it is treated as an individual person.
Yeah.
So with an individual person, if we look at where is the income, is basically your employer's super contribution coming into the fund.
Yeah.
Or if you buy a property, then it's the rent that you're going to receive. It has nothing to do with your actual salary.
Oh.
So it's interesting.
Do you know what?
Yeah.
I just learned something there.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know that. So what you're saying is the income coming into the super, so treating that like as though you're an individual.
That's right.
Is your contributions you're making plus the rent you're receiving from the property. They don't take into account anything else.
No.
Wow.
No. So you might carry millions of debt, but it is irrelevant to your own super fund because your super is as a separate individual person.
Okay.
So we look at that as a separate entity.
That's good news.
So that opened up a lot of possibilities if you wanted to buy a property or if you are not qualified really to borrow money outside of superannuation.
Well, you're saying you actually may more likely get it in your super.
Exactly, sometimes, yeah. So another thing is we all know super is only taxing for 15%.
Yeah.
And if you hold the asset for over 12 months, you actually get a discount as well. So it's only taxed for 10%. Say, for example, if you made a capital gain of $500,000, literally you only need to pay $50K for the tax. And what's more into it is if you retire, you move the whole asset into a pension, then you don't need to pay any tax. So that successfully removed all the concerns around, we need to pay a lot of tax when we have an appreciation of the property.
So doing that though, I mean, obviously super is designed to be a long-term investment. So
Exactly.
if you are going to do this, you have to be thinking long-term because you can't just switch it in and out. Which probably brings us to our next question is what are the rules and the restrictions that sit around this?
So for superannuation, we're going to have to do it very carefully because the tax office doesn't really want you to spend all your retirement savings on one single asset.
No.
Because you
It's
can
more
imagine,
risky.
it's more risky, right? So you put all your life savings on one single asset. So we have
Although
seen...
as real estate agents, we just don't understand that. Like it's interesting, isn't it? Sometimes
It
they go,
is.
I'd just rather have property.
Yeah. So we have seen people like, say, for example, if they go out and buy an investment property and there's certain kind of natural disaster or bad tenants, things that they need to repair, that just consumes a lot of money and turns out to be a bad investment. Or if there's like a fluctuation of the property price because, they might not be able to afford a property in Sydney, they might go into a very remote or regional town to buy a property. So that comes with a lot of risk.
It does,
Yeah.
yes.
And especially put all the money in one single asset. That's pretty dangerous. So the restriction really is the tax office, they don't want you to bet all your money into one single asset. You need to think about diversification.
So, but I suppose in that, a lot of people with their supers, how does it work? Like how much do you need to have as a deposit in order to borrow the money? Because obviously you people outside of that, you might be getting 100% finance, but in super, is that different?
So in super, generally, right now, you can't really get any loans from major banks like CBAs or ANZ, these major banks. So only smaller banks are playing in the self-managed super fund, lending money, that kind of environment. And generally, you can borrow up to 80%
Right.
to buy a property. So it's the same like if you want to buy outside, you can borrow up to 80%.
Mm-hmm.
But if you borrow less than 70% or 60%, generally the interest rate will get better. So let's say if you have 200K and you say, look, I want to buy $1 million property. Can I do that? Yes, absolutely you can. But you also need to factor in the cost of paying for the stamp duty. You might need an agent to do that, some running costs and things like that, and some diversification as well.
So you have to manage your numbers, like listening to that, because I suppose you can always contribute more money to super if you need it, but that does attract, if you over contribute, it does attract extra tax, but that may not be a problem. So you've got to make sure you've got your amount of money you can spend and your extra costs all covered in the fund. So you really need to get your planning right.
That's right. Absolutely right.
And in terms of, are you saying there's other banks, not the main banks, that are playing in the self-managed super? So that's interesting.
Yes.
Does that mean the interest rate's higher?
No, actually, when the banks are exiting the self-managed super fund, landing that kind of environment, simply because it's just too much of a compliance work for the bank to make little money.
Is that why they won't do it?
Well, absolutely, because self-managed super fund is highly regulated. That's that kind of environment. And if you borrow money, there's hundreds of pages of loan contract that you need to read. And sometimes they would need you to have a lawyer to explain the loan contract to you to make sure you understand. So there's actually a lot of work getting involved.
Right, because it's self-managed super, you've got to comply a lot more and make sure everyone understands what they're doing.
That's right.
Right, interesting. We're learning a lot here.
But getting back to the rate, because there are more players coming in, so the rate is actually getting to be more competitive. Well, in the old days, there's only the banks are doing it. The rate is actually not that competitive. So you can say rate over 10%, but now rate is maybe just a 1% higher than a normal investment loan that you're getting.
And in terms of the guarantees you have to give, is it just a guarantee within the fund itself, or do they take personal guarantees outside of that?
That's a really good question, because a lot of people think, okay, we have...
Particularly self-managed super fund, they're generally business owners, and I can tell you.
That's right.
Personal guarantees are part of the journey, yeah.
The lender will never do any business that's going to damage their own assets. So usually what happens is, in the self-managed super fund, if you go ahead and buy a property, only that property can be a guarantee for your loan. But what if that is not enough to cover all the debt? Then you're personally liable to meet up whatever the rest is.
They get you anyway.
Exactly.
One of the things I took out from what you just said is just to make sure you're being careful.
Exactly.
Because it's going into super and it is a long-term play and you can't pull it out. You've got to make sure you've got your numbers. So that might actually mean you can't spend as much as you maybe possibly could outside of super.
That's right.
Yeah, so you've got to make sure you get your numbers right.
Yes. So we often do a full budget before we're getting into this to make sure that we have enough cash for any kind of contingencies.
And most people in their super, chipping away at it. And I would have thought buying one property could use up a lot of their super.
Yes.
Obviously, they're relying on the capital gain of that property, to be able to get to a certain level and then pay it off. Is your advice to clients you should have an active pay down the debt strategy, or do you try and balance that with shares as well as the property? Like, what's your sort of view on that as a financial planner?
Everyone's situation is different. So usually for a much younger client, we can take the risk of having probably negative cash flow for a longer period of time. But the moment that you probably get entering like 10 years approaching retirement, then you need to focus more on cash flow. Should I put more into shares? So if you have a property that is heavily in debt and you have to contribute a lot more to make it, running, that is not an ideal scenario. We've been very particular for anyone like over 50 and they want to say, look, we want to borrow some money and buy a property in the super. That needs to be assessed carefully, because that's probably not a good strategy for everyone. But if someone's in their 40s and even in their 30s and they wanted to implement such a strategy, it's a different time horizon that we're looking at. Yeah, so there's no right or wrong answer. It depends on everyone's individual situation. You can run projections and see what the outcome would be, and then assess and to find out the best solution.
So just to summarize what we've learned today, there's good reason to buy in super. I think you made some good points there about the stability of the income and how it's assessed differently than as an individual.
Yes.
Capital gains, I get that. So you can save on tax in the long run. You need to make sure you're taking a long-term view. If you are going to buy it in super, you can't fiddle-faddle.
That's right.
You can't just change your mind. you've got to be sure that this is the strategy. Do your numbers. So make sure you've got it. I'm suppose, Frank, you can help people with that.
Yes.
Like done all your numbers in terms of stamp duty, solicitors, all the costs that go with it.
Yes.
And make sure you get that worked out. Potentially using a buyer's agent to help find the property. It's interesting listening to speak to that because haven't really thought about it that much to that level. So that was good. And I suppose the last point is it's not for everybody, and it depends on your personal situation.
Exactly. And if I could add one last point, we have seen the past generations that the wealth was created because of the property price is going up. A lot of people, they're young people, they're doing the same job and working for another 30 years. They might never be able to achieve that level of wealth because of the property price.
Yeah, right.
And we might not be able to see the property price double in another 10 years' time. So my biggest worry is if a whole generation's wealth was created because of the property price, then the wealth can be wiped away because of the drop of the price. And we've seen that in other countries. Because that's just how the economy goes. It's a whole big cycle. And once we enter in that kind of downward cycle, nobody can stop it. And if we're heavily investing into properties, like all our money outside superannuation is invested into property, the money inside super is invested into properties, that's going to present some serious issue or danger if we enter in that kind of downward cycle.
I mean, there's a lot of people have a lot of theories about that. I mean, I suppose what you're saying is make sure you're balanced.
Exactly.
So if you've got property in your super, maybe you need your shares outside super
Exactly.
and vice versa if you're doing it.
That's right.
Thank you, Frank, for coming in to talk about the super fund.
Yeah.
Very much appreciate you coming in. Thank you for those, well, basically the way to do it. And we'll be seeing you again.
Not a problem. Thank you.